is the administration so sure that you're not selling borrowers false hope for a second time here? How will this proposal pass legal muster when the first one didn't?
Yeah, first shout out to the Yukon Huskies. But look, as the president said yesterday, we're fixing a broken system. We're trying to provide a fair shot to Americans trying to access higher education. And we're doing that by addressing runaway interest. We know it's been out of control, the interest that people have to pay. We're going after those schools that are defrauding our borrowers. We're providing relief to those who've been paying for decades. We're providing relief to eligible public servants. And we're addressing hardship that many Americans face.
It's not you. They willingly entered into it. And this is, again, and it's a problem created by Democrats. That was Education Secretary Miguel Cardona. Give a shout out to the Yukon Huskies. I mean, it just sounds so out of touch because the president has said, yeah, we're going to pay off more people's student loans. Welcome back to the show. Top of the second hour because, you know, you've got money to spare. Why do you need to go on vacation or do any kind of home improvement? You just, you know, give your money to the academic welfare. Super simple. That's all you got to do. You know, goodness.
I didn't vote for that.
Oh, well, Kane. Tough beans. You got to give your fair share, which is everything.
Well,
yeah.
What I'll be eating is tough beans.
Yeah. Dana Loesch with you. Listen coast to coast. Find us on Channel 347 DirecTV. We're also on X, too. You can also stream us on X, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. The problem with this, too, they made it even worse, is because they went and they started comparing student loan forgiveness to the PPP loan from the pandemic. So Representative Andrew Clyde had tweeted, Joe Biden once again announces that he's going to transfer millions more in student debt. You know, he says it's a scam, which it is. And then the White House retweeted it and said Congressman Clyde had $156,697 of debt forgiven from a PPP loan. Well, that's not actually how it worked. It was a grant. And if it was a loan, and it was a grant because it's how the IRS also categorized it. And if it had been like the student debt loan forgiveness, then the IRS would have looked at it as income and he would have had to pay taxes on it. And that's why they literally, let me put this out. This is from the IRS. They actually had to pass an amendment on this. And this amendment had to clarify what was that the forgiveness was that expenses were deductible and that any kind of forgiveness wasn't an income. This was the Paycheck Protection Program loans are taxable. IRS advises that improperly forgiven PPP loans are taxable. You had to go by all of the guidance. It was a grant and you couldn't fire people. You couldn't have all these restrictions that went along with it. And otherwise it had to be repaid in full. And they said they actually had to pass an amendment again to the PPP to clarify this. And it got into how loan recipients who receive forgiveness were qualified to use the proceeds properly to pay eligible expenses. It had to be work only, had to deal with salaries, etc. And they were investigated. They've been collecting a lot of money from people who did not follow protocol for the PPP grant. That's the thing. You can't compare both of that's stupid. You can't. They're not the same thing. They're just literally not the same thing as all. They were. And the other point that I made too with this is that these were businesses that were forcibly closed under penalty of jail and their economic means were seized. When you're comparing that to willfully taking out a student loan, you are dumb. They are not even remotely the same thing. Not even remotely the same thing. Literally, the government made businesses shut down. The government barred businesses from operating. They barred people from working. They stopped people from generating an income. They stopped employers from opening their doors. They stopped employees from being able to generate money to pay their bills. That is incomparable to college students who take out loans willfully, voluntarily, fully aware of the risk, in a completely not even remotely close to that scenario context. And you had the restrictions, and I'm pulling this up, they were strict. Under the terms of the loan program for the Paycheck Protection, lenders could forgive the full amount of the loan if the loan recipient met 3 conditions. You had to be eligible to receive it, meaning it had to be a small business or an independent contractor, et cetera, et cetera. You had to be in business before February 15th of 2020. You had to have people who were paid for their services, et cetera. You had to use the proceeds to pay for eligible expenses, payroll, rent, interest on the business mortgage, and utilities. And that was it. And then you had to apply for loan forgiveness. And then it could be, then if the above conditions were met, then and only then could the loan program, could that forgiven portion be excluded from income, meaning it wasn't considered taxable income. But they said if the conditions are not met, then the amount of the loan proceeds that were forgiven but do not meet the conditions, that has to be considered taxable income. So to compare this again to willfully taking out a student loan is the dumbest thing ever. These people have no idea what they're talking about, and it is embarrassing. Oh my gosh, I am cringing to death. How in the world are you in government and you're saying this stupid stuff? When I see stupid people on social media make this point, I cringe to death. How are you an adult, like functioning in this society, and you don't even know how this works? Oh my gosh, like go home and like give us time to pass over the cringe, please. Can you cringe to death? Because I feel like I am. Gosh. Entirely different things. And it's amazing that they are trying to pay this. Loans, when you take out a loan, you do so, you're going to have to repay it. You're going to have to repay it. It's a loan. When you're a student and you're taking out a college loan, you're going to have to repay that. This is like the government was actually closing businesses. No one forced you to go to college, but the government was forcing people to shut their business. No one forced you to take these courses, but the government did force people to not work. So you see, they're not even remotely the same thing. It's so stupid. That's so stupid. I'm embarrassed for these people. Now, the forgiveness portion of it, again, it's how it was classified. I just can't even, I can't even. And they even had like the forgiveness. When you look at the program, they had that provision for forgiveness actually written in. They just clarified what was already in existence. So that's why it's not a credible comparison also for the student loan thing. This is our government, you guys. It is our government. But again, the reason why, and I've written about this before, my friend Glenn Reynolds actually wrote a short book on the whole, about how the government took over student loans and made it incredibly expensive. And they did so under the guise of making it more affordable, but it was never actually made more affordable. It's a scam. It's an absolute scam. The government has to be removed from that whole process of student loans altogether. And we have to actually go back to merit-based loan systems, because the math that they use in order to qualify for a loan now, it's crazy. Like you can't, you wouldn't be able to go and take out a loan for a business, but you could go if you wanted to take out a 6-figure loan for college and they'll just give it to you. It's insane. It's irresponsible, and they do it on purpose. And that's after the government took it over. Democrats took it over, and this is what they decided. This is what they decided. And they also, honestly, when you look at undergrad and grad school, when you look at borrowing, I think there has to be a limit on it, because the tuition rates for these universities, you're not getting the return on the money that you're putting into it. You're just not. There's a lot of things that we could do differently with regards to student loans, and we should be doing it differently.